Test 1 2, test 1 2. 1 2, check 1 2, check. Hey everybody, it's me, AJ Golden, self-proclaimed money nerd and personal finance geek. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Personal Finance Made Easy. I created this channel to help you win with money by making topics such as budgeting, saving, and investing simple and easy. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that many of you have been asking for. How do I save, AJ? Well, here are my top tips on how to save money. Let's get into the video. Saving really isn't a tough concept to learn. All you have to know is that you've got to have enough income in order to be able to set aside money for a future purpose. Saving isn't meant to be able to use for your current expenses. Savings are supposed to be used for some future purpose or goal. So we got to set that money aside so that we don't end up spending it on our everyday expenses. It's just as simple as that. Over the last few videos, we've been talking about budgeting and how to actually create a budget by listing out your income, subtracting your expenses, and ensuring that you're spending your money on paper before the month begins. Well, in order to save some of that, you've got to ensure that you're putting in a line item that you are able to set aside into an account that will allow you to be able to accumulate that money for a future purpose. That's what savings is. But you've got to do it before the month begins. You've got to put into your budget an area for savings so that you can take that money out and set it aside so that it can be used for that future purpose. Let's talk about some ways that you can do that. The first way is to remember to pay yourself first. We talked about this in the budgeting video. Make sure that you're setting aside money for savings before you pay any other expenses, because you are important and you're just as important as that cable bill or that phone bill. Your future goals are worth setting aside money for. So pay yourself first. That's my number one tip. The next thing you have to remember is either increase your income or cut back on some of your expenses. Let's talk about increasing your income first. The way that I suggest that you create additional income is you can either work overtime if your job allows for you to work overtime, which I know is difficult in this period of time because many of your jobs are cutting back on hours and even putting people out on furlough. So what I would suggest is finding a side hustle.
Yeah, you got it.
Find something on the side that you can do to increase your income or make more money. We're going to talk about side hustles in a future video because there's a book that I recommend called Side Hustle, and it's by an author named Guillebeau, and he talks about all sorts of ways that you can create additional income. So let's keep that for a future video. But you have to find ways to side hustle. I would suggest that you find a passion of yours and determine how you can create a side hustle from it. The other way is that you can upskill. What's upskilling, you might ask? Well, upskilling is about finding different skills that you can add to your life that will be marketable in either your current organization or another organization. So let's say that you are an administrative assistant. Maybe you can take on some programming classes and learn how to program. If you can learn how to program, maybe you can help create apps or build websites or other types of things that can help get additional income into your household. The other thing that you can do is you can cut back on your expenses. So by cutting back on those expenses, you're allowing yourself to put aside the money that you would have spent on something else and allocating it toward your expenses. And I know it's easier said than done because it means that you have to give up something that either you like or sacrifice something in order to be able to set aside money. The important thing is that the goal that you're saving for has to be motivating enough for you to make those temporary sacrifices today to set aside money for that future goal. So you've got to do some soul searching to determine how important that future goal is for you to be able to set aside those funds. So now that I've given you the two areas that you have to focus on, either increasing your income or cutting your expenses, let's talk a little bit about what are you saving for? Well, here are the three things that I think you should be saving for. One, and probably one of the more important things to save for, is an emergency fund. You need to set aside money in the event that there is an emergency. That way, you're not falling back on spending money on your credit card to accomplish or to cover things that you could have covered with an emergency fund. That's how you end up getting further into debt instead of empowering yourself to be able to take care of your finances in the event of an emergency. So the first thing that you should set aside money for is an emergency fund. And what I recommend is setting aside enough money to cover 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So you remember that budget that we did a few videos back? Look at all of your expenses, determine the total cost of those expenses, multiply that times 3 or 6 months, and that is the money or the goal that you should be saving for. 3 to 6 months of expenses. This should cover you in the event that something terrible happens and you have to rely on your savings in order to cover those expenses. When you start setting aside money for your emergency fund, please remember to set that money aside in a separate account that's somewhat difficult for you to access. That way, when you have the urge to try to pull money from that account, there's enough of a barrier between you and that money that you have to second guess whether or not you really need it. Is this really a true emergency that I need to pull money out of that fund? Or is it something that I just want and I want to spend money on it? So make sure that you're separating that money into a different account. The way that I save my emergency fund money is I put it in a money market fund, an account that gives you a little bit more interest than a regular account. That way, you can get a little bit more money growing on top of that savings. You don't want to invest that money because if you invest it, there is a risk that you will lose that money. Oh, no. And when the emergency comes, you won't have an opportunity or you won't have the money to be able to use it in the event of that emergency. So set the money aside and don't ever touch it unless it's an emergency. The second thing that you should be saving for is major expenses. Maybe you want to go on a nice vacation, or you're saving for a down payment on your house. Or maybe you want to buy a car or some furniture, whatever the case might be, whatever that major expense is, you should be setting aside money every single payday to cover that expense. Well, the way that you do that is first determine how much you need to save for your end goal. Then once you've determined the amount that you need to set aside, then you need to determine when it is that you want to purchase that at a future date. Let's say that you wanted to go on a vacation next year and you want to spend $1,200 on the vacation. Well, in order to do that, you just need to determine $1,200 is your end goal amount, and you have 1 year in order to save for that $1,200 expense. So the easy math is take the $1,200, divide it by 12 months, and you get $100 per month. This lets you know that you need to set aside $100 per month in order to have the $1,200 to spend on that vacation in 1 year. Well, let's say you get paid twice a month. Well, that means that you simply divide the $1,200 by 24, which lets you know that you should set aside $50 each and every paycheck in order to have that $1,200 next year. If you've gone through the exercise of creating a budget, it's pretty obvious what some of those things are that may not be worth your spending money on anymore. Things such as subscriptions that you no longer use. Maybe you have a Netflix account that you never log into, or you have a Hulu subscription that you have absolutely never even watched a show on Hulu. Look at those areas and determine if you can cut back or cut out some of those things from your budget. Then take the money from those cut expenses and shift it into the savings account that you created earlier. Maybe you have the habit of eating out a lot. Now might be the time for you to pick up a cooking habit and figure out how you can make those delicious meals in your home. So cut back on the eating out, start making meals at home, and then you can set aside the difference into that savings account. Perhaps you like the convenience of picking up a meal that someone's prepared for you. Well, a way that you can get around that is prepping your meals at the beginning of the week. And then they're already prepared so that you can just pick it up and reheat it throughout the week. That can help curb your appetite. See what I did there? Curb your appetite for spending money on eating out. The third thing that you should save for is investing. Some of you have shown an interest in investing in that you want to be able to have money to purchase rental real estate. Well, in order for you to be able to purchase rental real estate, most banks want you to have 25% to be able to put as a down payment on your investment property. And that also depends on other factors such as your credit and if you have enough income to warrant the debt that you're going to be taking on as a mortgage. So they look at things such as your credit and your income to debt ratio to determine if you can qualify for an investment property mortgage. We'll talk about that in much more depth when we start to look at investment real estate. So those are my 3 tips for saving. So my challenge for you this week is I want you to create a savings goal. Let's say you want to purchase a house, or you want to buy a car, or you simply want to build up that emergency fund. Put that goal on a piece of paper saying, this is what I'm saving for. I'm saving to build up a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Based upon my budget that I've created from a previous video, I know that I need to set aside X number of dollars. Let's say it's $5,000. Figure out when you want to have that $5,000 saved by. $5,000 saved at the end of 6 months. Put that on a piece of paper, divide the $5,000 by the 6 months, and determine how much you need to have saved each and every payday. So what you're going to do is write out your goal, determine how much you need to set aside each payday, open up the account that you're going to put that money into, and create an automatic draft to go into that account each and every payday so that you don't even have to think about savings. It's automatic. You won't even miss that money from your regular account. Trust me on this. Once you start to save and you make that a habit, that money will start to accumulate each and every payday and you won't even miss it. The next thing you know, you'll look up at that account and you'll have money accumulated. You'll be so proud of yourself that you'll want to celebrate. And I encourage you to celebrate. You should celebrate the fact that you are setting aside money for your future each and every payday. That is a monumental milestone. So each month, maybe you decide that you're going to give yourself a little bitty treat. Don't break the budget. You're going to give yourself a little bitty treat because you saw that you were allowing your savings to increase. So until next time, I want you to keep living on purpose, pursue your passion, and get the goal.